All right, everyone, I'm back. Welcome to the actual Dune Book Study for tonight, and got a good little section to go through here. With me, as always, is my trusty TA, Al Conan.
Hi,
Say hi,
Al
Conan.
Conan.
I forgot to change our names here. Let me do that. I forgot what I put yours. Mine was Prof Mua Geek. That's right, Mua Geek. And then how do we spell yours? Baron Hart Al, just Al Konen, or what did we do with that last time? You're very particular about it, which is what I know to ask.
Baron Al Conan.
Two Ks or one K
or two N's.
Okay, Al's very particular when you mash up his name. It needs to be just so. Now, do you want the K capitalized?
Yes, I do.
Okay. There we go. I know what Al needs. What Al has to have.
Be good, Al. Be good.
Be good, Al. Yeah, as I was saying that, I thought,
you knew the wheels were
don't
turning.
Open the door for him. Okay, on to.
It's been a quiet day, and the mind is now active. So,
yep, I'm glad to have a nice quiet day.
Oh, by the way, stop dissing Battlestar Galactica. We get it. You didn't like it.
I saw you in the chat. I heard that.
Every time I turn around, Battlestar Galactica.
Did you hear the part though where I was talking about the schedule? So I think maybe 2 more weeks for Dune, and then moving to Halloween Tree. Does that sound pretty doable for you?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 weeks. We
can do that in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I'd be.
Two, so that sounds good.
I better shut my mouth. I'm good at it. To keep this at an hour, hour, yes, we should just talk. We should just split it into 2.
Yeah, I think so. Alrighty. Well, speaking of keeping it to an hour, let's go ahead and dive right in. I forgot that we do have one last chapter from last time that we didn't get to. So that chapter right before book 3 starts, which is a pretty interesting pivotal chapter because this is Jessica going through her trials there to become the Reverend Mother. And she, of course, they've changed it a little bit as it's developed on Arrakis. So it's somewhat new to her, but as we start and get ready for this, Paul sees Chani in green, mourning for her father, and he says green for mourning. I thought that was interesting that green would be the color of mourning, and I thought, well, black is obviously their all the time color, trying to blend into the night and stuff like that because they go out at night. But I thought,
what?
I don't know, black is sort of a unknown. Black is the darkness, black is the death. That's the unknown for us. So we normally would use black as mourning, but for them, green is unknown. A lush green world, that's completely foreign to them. So I don't know. Maybe that's
I was actually kind of with you on that, and I was also thinking, when unfortunately you're at a funeral, black stands out, and what's going to stand out in Arrakis? Green. So
yeah.
It's. It makes sense that they use such a color. I mean, of course, today, black. A lot of people will wear black, whatever, but a certain styling, you can tell someone's going to be in mourning.
Yeah. So we're about to do, after we get this chapter, we'll do a 2-year time jump. But it's interesting to call attention to Jessica's mindset of their place in the Fremen and what's going on right now, and then to juxtapose it with what comes after when we get there. So she's doing this trial. And she knows that there's some danger to it. And she says, I have no choice but to do this. She thought, we must move swiftly if we're to secure our place among these Fremen. And we see, Paul's thinking along those lines to a certain extent as well. And it's neat to see Jessica and Paul's similar but different journeys into the Fremen world and whatnot. She's called Jessica of the Weirding. Again, that Weirding fighting style, but sort of a unknown, almost mystical element to them. She does realize there's danger, what's going to become of Paul. I just think I don't really have any specific points to point out about it other than to talk about the general interesting thing that happens. So it's very much like a Jedi kind of thing almost, but with the drinking that concoction, she becomes one with the consciousnesses of all the Reverend Mothers on Arrakis there, and the consciousness of the previous one is there to guide her and to open up in this. So that's fascinating alone. But then the fact that, oh
Right,
yeah, she was pregnant.
I was waiting to see if you were going to get that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a cool concept. So Aaliyah, this,
I mean, and think about a frightening concept for the child, because here,
yeah.
I mean, you ask anybody, do you remember when you were in the womb? No. Well, guess what? Aaliyah will. Aaliyah basically, the sleeper was awoken, basically, in a way.
Yeah, the sleeper's awoken. This is interesting. Back to the drawing board before we get too far away from it. It says that in Asian cultures, white is the color of mourning. I did remember hearing that at some place. I think they got like the bleeding heart flower, which is actually quite a beautiful flower, but it's a funeral flower in certain parts of Asia because of things like that too. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but no, Aaliyah's character, she's a great setup here because we know even in the womb she's conscious, and Jessica does what she can for her and comforts her, and we find out later from Aaliyah's point of view what's going on here. But it is a great setup for the character, so that when we meet her later, there's something I don't it's not hard for me at all to understand how the Fremen women would be afraid of her, because that's just so uncanny. Talk about something from a horror story. This child, this 2-year-old, for all intents and purposes, walking around with the knowledge of an adult, saying things that only an adult should understand. That's creepy. That's incredibly creepy.
What was that movie with all the kids were like blonde and have freaky eyes, and Children of the Damned?
Oh, is it Children of the Damned? I thought it was The Corn. Christopher Reeves in the remake. Is that?
Yeah, well, yeah, but no, the Children of the Corn is something different. Yeah, Children of the Damned. All the kids were like really weird, bizarre looking, and had these freaky looking eyes.
Yeah, so that is creepy, but I mean, of course, there's no malice in her. Now, also the fact, though, that, and she says this later, but I think it's interesting to even point it out now in this beginning for her, she becomes another Reverend Mother because she's gone through this trial with her mother. So even as a 2-year-old, as she says later, the tribe has 2 Reverend Mothers now, which is
Village of the Damned. Sir Target game reminds me. I knew something wasn't quite right. I knew it was Damned was in there somewhere.
Yeah. Troy says Herbert suggests racial memories and the Reverend Mothers can access the memories somehow encoded in their mitochondrial DNA. So all women in their ancestry. Yeah. But she gets to that point. She looks to that place that's closed off to her and says, this is the place where we cannot look. She thought, there's the place the Reverend Mothers are so reluctant to mention, the place where only the Kwisatz Haderach may look. So, and we heard about that, of course, from the beginning, knowing about Paul, that he might be the person who can look into that, as he is, but even his prescience is limited to a certain degree. As Troy just says, continued. Yeah, Paul, on the other hand, can access the memories of his fathers as well as mothers.
I'm trying to remember what she drank. What did it had something to do with a baby worm.
Yeah, they do cultivate certain little makers to create these. It's all about that spice, or the makers are involved in it somehow. And she has to change this poison herself, like in her, she has to change it, which I didn't quite. I've read this book like 3 times now, and even reading it again this time, I still didn't quite understand how she's doing this or exactly what level of metaphysics is going on here, how she's changing this substance for everybody else then to drink, but she changes it so it's no longer
stuff
poison.
With dancing particles within her, its motion so rapid, even frozen time, because I'm dancing particles. Familiar structure, atomic linkages, carbon atom here, glucose molecule, entire chain of molecules confronted her, and she recognized the proteins. And she's like having to take what's there and put it together in a harmless way.
Yeah, now she's doing that within her body, but she's not going to vomit it back up and then others drink it. So I've always wondered, how is she changing it in the flask or in the bowl or whatever for other people to drink? It's always been a mystery to me.
Cheney's taking the catalyst from my body to change the poison in that sack. Jessica thought, why?
Okay, so maybe she's taking some secretion from, or so she is taking something from Jessica's body and putting it in the sack. So still kind of gross to think of it in those terms, but Herbert's pretty delicate with the language.
The suspension of time relaxes hold on her, and she senses motion. The tube spout from her sac was touched to her mouth, gently collecting a drop of moisture.
There you go. Okay, so there is some sort of thing there. It's interesting. So Troy points out the specifics here. The water of life is derived by drowning the sand trout in the water. So you do have this. You drown one of the makers in the water. And remember, we said that from a Jungian reading, the makers are phallic symbols. So the Reverend Mothers derive their power from drinking the water which drowns the masculine. Again, that just contributes to the theme that we've been looking at of the disconnect between masculine and feminine, and how. But the Kwisatz Haderach, of course, can look in both paths, and he doesn't need to have that division and so forth. So, yeah. Troy, they did expel water to change it. So, all right. Tom Spiegel says, "Can we stop talking about fluid-filled sacks?" That's probably a good idea, Tom. Let's go ahead and move on from that. So this crazy thing happens with Aaliyah. That's going to be interesting setup for her. But then I want to talk about, before we leave the chapter, Chani and Paul, of course, drink from the liquid as well, as all the tribe does there. And suddenly, talk about a moment where no more tense flirtations, no more little competitions, no more awkwardness. Like, boom, they are just, crazy about each other in this point. But it's touching how it starts. Because Paul, of course, is still dealing with the prescience and trying to find his way, his path within all of the things that are going on. And she, of course, complicates it, but in a good way, because she draws comfort from her. So, and she's, of course, mourning for her father. He is wondering about this change that happened to his mother. As she points out, they both have lost their fathers to the Arconans. Trying to find a place to read here. In a moment of clarity, he saw how Chani was trembling. "What is it you want to say?" he asked. "Usul," she whispered. Again, that's his Fremen name of his tribe there. You cannot back into the future," he said. A profound compassion for her swept through him. He pulled her against him, stroked her head. Chani, don't fear. "Usul, help me," she cried. As she spoke, he felt the drug complete its work within him, ripping away the curtains to let him see the distant gray turmoil of his future. And he draws comfort from her as he's seeing this future, as he's seeing and sort of cementing his place and his destiny. She's right there with him, and he's drawing comfort from her, which sets her up as a great, because she is, if he represents the coming together of masculine and feminine, then here we go. This is her, representing that feminine that comes together with him to see that. And even says that in the end, he says, she says, "What do you see?" Or he says, "What do you see?" He demanded. And she said, "I see us giving love to each other in a time of quiet between storms. It's what we were meant to do." The drug had him again, and he thought, "So many times you've given me comfort and forgetfulness." He felt anew the hyper-illumination within its high-relief imagery of time, sensed his future becoming memories, the tender indignities of physical love, the sharing and communion of selves, the softness and the violence, which is a really cool way to talk about basically copulating there, "You're the strong one, Chani," he muttered. "Stay with me, always," she said, and kissed his cheek. What a beautiful way to end a book, book two within the novel. Good, solid resolution, but we set up all these kinds of things to come. You want to know what's happening. But it sets up Paul and Chani together now, masculine and feminine united, to encounter whatever destiny he sees. We don't know the ins and outs of it.
And it's almost like they're joined more than just a man and a woman. They're joined even more so, like through the ritual, through the waters, through they're now almost like they're chemically connected.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that primal, the primordial element of water, they're chemically, elementally connected. It's a good point.
An atom to one circling the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. I also like the point that when book 3 starts with the next chapter here, we actually don't come back to Paul. We don't come back to Jessica. For the first 2 chapters of this, we are with Baron Harkonnen.
He is not happy.
And
I'm just visioning, boom, boom. Like when you see the astronauts on the moon, boom, going down the hallway.
With his suspensors, yeah. And he's, of course, upset because now we find out we saw a little bit in that last chapter. Last time we saw Fade Ralpha doing that contest, the gladiator fight there. We did see a little bit of the tension and the sort of resistance and disobedience, or sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of teenager-like, testing of the Fade Ralpha head of his uncle. But now we're full blown. We find out it's an assassination attempt. And what a crazy, appropriate way to try and kill Harkonnen. So one of his young boys that he has, sent to him, they placed, see if I'm describing this right, they placed a needle within his thigh, a poison, in case so that where the Harkonnen would put his hand on the thigh, it would prick him, and then the poison would be in his bloodstream.
Well, any kind of weird position, that it would just pierce. A pressure, you pierce whatever was putting the pressure there. Let your minds wander where they be. But...
Well, yeah, I mean, you can imagine whatever kind of, degraded, whatever the Harkonnen would go to. But it's interesting. He tries to sell it at first as though he saw a blemish and he's the one that catches it. Of course, we found out later it's Thufir who warned him of it. Thufir is interesting, kind of playing both sides against each other because he had been the one to tell Fade how to do that. So this is fascinating. We know that Thufir he thinks Paul and everyone's dead. He knows Jessica's still alive, and he thinks Jessica was the betrayer. So Thufir's kind of biding his time until he can get revenge. Same thing with Gurney Halleck, who we also know is alive. Same doing that with the smugglers, as we'll find out later. But do you mind turning your headphones just a slight down there? It's okay. If it still goes, it may be something on my end, but just hear that slight little. Yep, we're all good. That's over. So, yeah. Jedi Master Zootopia says, I think Thufir is just trying all the ways he wanted to kill the Harkonnens when he was with Duke Leto. That's true. So you get this eventually it comes. I like the fact that we don't know what's going on yet, and it comes to a head when Harkonnen brings Fade Ralpha in to speak to him, and he confronts him, and we get the interiority of Fade Ralpha through the conversation, as well as Harkonnen, what they think of each other.
It's like everything's laid on the table, and they end up with a begrudging respect for each other, sort of.
Yeah, the Baron has no other heir. It must be Fade. He knows it's not going to be the other. And he knows
he can't produce anybody himself because that's just not what he does.
My tastes, as he says later. But of course he has. I mean, Jessica's his daughter, so it has.
Yeah, but I don't know. Was that? Did we ever find out if that was?
If the mother actually slept with him, or just
if it was like a more chemical, laboratory thing.
I don't know. I mean, the Bene Gesserits do work through seduction. Maybe Troy would know that. Maybe that's in some of the later supplemental material.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. But I don't. My memory on it's very.
Yeah, because it is an important point of the book that the Baron is infertile in his persuasion. He with his after young boys that's not going to produce more life, and that's key to the themes of the book. The masculine and feminine need to come together for fertility, for life to come about. But yeah, you're right. They do. Baron knows he needs an heir. Fade Ralpha realizes that the Baron needs him, but then also comes to realize that he still has more he needs to learn from the Baron. So it is but then, oh my gosh, the punishment, and this plays into the Baron being, only liking boys too, because he sort of resents Fade's constant dalliances in the slave tent with all the women. So Fade has been there just constantly sleeping with all these slave girls. And he's going to force Fade to go down there and kill each and every one of them by his own hand as punishment for the attempt on his.
What a waste.
Wow. That I know. Well, I mean, it's so twisted and sick, kill what you love as I watch. This is your punishment. I mean, of course, everything Fade's doing is sick too and twisted. But what is even scarier about it is the part where Fade says, I could refuse. He won't kill me. But I know, or he knows that if he refused, the Baron would think of something even worse to come up for punishment for not doing that. I mean, it is wow, it's twisted. So, but in that wonderful way to end the chapter, I know you, Fade, said the Baron said, you will not refuse. All right, Fade, Routha thought. I need you now. I see that. The bargain's made, but I'll not always need you. And someday, ... Wonderful way to end the chapter. Really great. Next chapter, we're still with Fade, with Baron Harkonnen, but now he's talking to Thufir. So we finally get Thufir, who's been talked about a bit. We get him into the in the conversation a bit more. And this is also a great, so that's a good way to pace out the writing, because we need some exposition at this point. We've got a 2-year gap. 2 years have elapsed, so you need to find a way to tell the reader what's been happening and what's gone on there.
And they have mentioned, they did mention in the previous chapter about the prophet that the Fremen have.
Yes,
this Muad'Dib.
Yeah. Yeah, the Fremen have this new prophet Muad'Dib who's won a lot of victories against outlying Harkonnen villages and so forth. Absolutely. Yeah, so we've got that. So we've talked a lot about Thufir and his weird place there serving Harkonnen, but what is he really thinking? What are his true motives? He's playing two sides against each other, etc. So the finally having him present here and finally having him be a player and have a scene with him is enough of a incentive for us to keep reading, even though we've got some heavy exposition still in their conversation. So we're a good way to pace it, a good way to structure out what's going on there. I do like the epigraph for this chapter. Deep in the human unconsciousness is a pervasive need for a logical universe that makes sense, but the real universe is always one step beyond logic. That's a sayings of Paul Muad'Dib. You can see how he would think that from his, prescience experience. But yeah, we tend, the psychological, even before you get to a spiritual sense of wanting to make sense, the brain does try to seek logical congruity. If you give the brain an abstract shape, it will look for a face. It wants to seek order, but you ultimately don't understand the things that happen to you as they happen. You have to make order after the fact. So interesting epigraph, especially coming here when Thufir is going to reveal to Harkonnen that the Sardaukar from Secundus is what makes the Sardaukar, and the Emperor fears what the Fremen might be for whoever controls Arrakis. And I love the fact when the Baron's remembering his conversation with Count Fenring now suddenly, and all the stupid things he said to play into that fear, And
also you find out why the Emperor turned against House Atreides, because the Duke's War Masters, Gertie Halleck and Duncan Idaho, had trained a fighting force, a small fighting force, to within a hair as good as the Sardaukar. Some of them even better.
And that's not even of the Fremen. That was just the Duke's men, period. Yeah, good point. And that's a really great way to, because if you've got the Fremen who you've already set up as these amazing warriors, but you're still going to have Gurney and Hawat here, and even in a way, Duncan Idaho. I don't want to spoil anything. In some ways, not what you think. Being a part in this, you have to have. They can't just be sort of hanging on to the coattails of the Fremen. This gives them something that they can really bring to the table too. The fact that they had trained non-Fremen almost as good. So imagine what you can do when you bring the two pieces together. That's what the Emperor's terrified of.
And of course, the Baron's already kind of got this idea anyway, because he's in Arrakis. He's kind of thinking it's his own Salusa Secundus. Because he wants to be able to get the Fremen to be his fighting force.
Yeah, exactly. And this once this scheme is revealed, or once this possibility is revealed, of course the Baron's going to play with it, and Hawat's supposedly going to help him with this. It's interesting that we don't get Hawat's interiority in this conversation. When Baron was talking to Fade, we got both of their interiorities, but when Hawat's talking to the Baron, we get what the Baron thinks Hawat might be thinking. The Baron smiled, and behind his smile, he asked himself, now, how does this fit into Hawat's personal scheming? So the Baron suspects that Hawat is scheming something, but we don't get Hawat's real interiority, at least not to the extent that we did Fade's or whatever. So that's an interesting way of keeping that card kind of withheld for a bit, keeping that suspicion and tension going for the reader. It's good. what a poisonous hate. You do have a little bit of it, and you end with that because you find out what is he worried about? Again, Jessica, that revenge on Jessica. So that's a driving misunderstanding that's could
I mean,
cause
also
some
trying to
conflict.
figure out how many of Fremen there are, and I think what they got 10 million. The Baron's jowls quivered with amazement, at least.
Yeah, because the numbers coming back had been hardly any.
Just
Like they were fun.
very small tribes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Now, in the third chapter of book 2, and you stop me if you wanted to say anything more about those other ones, but I like that we the epigraph again, because now we're going to go ahead and finally return to Paul. And now that we do, the epigraph is carefully, because we said before, the brain seeks logic but can't find it. So the universe is always one step beyond logic for it. So this epigraph, also from the sayings of Muad'Dib, there is in all things a pattern that is part of our universe. It has symmetry, elegance, and grace. Those qualities you find always in that which the true artist captures. You can find it in the turning of the seasons, in the way sand trails along a ridge, and the branch clusters of the brush of the patterns of its leaves. We try to copy these patterns in our lives and our society, seeking the rhythms, the dances, the forms that comfort. Yet it is possible to see peril in the finding of ultimate perfection. It is clear that the ultimate pattern contains its own fixity. In such perfection, all things move toward death, which is very true. The cycle, he talks about the seasons, the cycle is for fall and then ultimately winter, where nature dies and is reborn in spring or whatever, but we as humans do have a sort of cycle as well as physical beings, physical bodies and stuff. And so it's an interesting way that he puts that, because the Fremen, of course, are absolutely at one with the desert. They have to live like that. Of course, they don't have seasons per se on Arrakis, but interesting epigraph to set this up, because now Paul, we come to him and his eve right here before his major trial to finally ride the Maker.
Yeah, it's almost like he's sitting there when he doesn't have anything to do and he lets his mind wander. It's literally all over the place. Literally all over the place. Because he's remembering past,
Absolutely.
future, present. It's like all kind of in a big mix. Just like I said, Cheney prepared the meal for me, he told himself. Yet Cheney was in the deep south with our child, Leto the second. Kind of thing. So
yeah. In fact, one of the things he says here, he thinks in the landscape of a myth, he could not orient himself and say, I am I because I am here. Yeah, he doesn't have that, basic logical privilege, most people do, because his mind is
the boy needs to do something. Go ride a worm.
I also like when Cheney talks, he said she had quoted a Bene Gesserit proverb to him. No, I think it's Jessica. Jessica had quoted to him. When religion and politics travel in the same cart, the riders believe nothing can stand in their way. Their movements become headlong, faster and faster and faster. They put aside all thought of obstacles and forget what a precipice does not show itself to the man in a blind rush until it is too late. So remember what Herbert is trying to show in terms of the danger when you seek out a leader for yourself, a political leader, and set them up as a quote unquote superhero, as he means, but he means that sort of divine kind of, you think of them as your chosen one who's just going to bring all this, So when religion and politics travel in the same cart, the writers believe nothing is standing in their way, and they don't see the obstacles that'll hurl them over the precipice because they're so right. We are the good guys. Our party is the good guys. Our leader is the good one. He will usher in true, wonderful hope, and he will, blah, blah, blah. And you see it on all sides. But, I tend to see it a little bit more from the ideologues, as I've been talking about in previous videos. But it's interesting to see how he wrote this in the 60s. I think the 60s, right? Yeah. And it's still relevant today, Nothing about religion is simple, she warned. And it's true. It's very true. So she is standing because remember, she of course, Cheney is like sort of a Reverend Mother in training. That was part of the ritual as well for her to before Jessica took the water. they have a lot of. I don't really have much to say about their talks and everything before the writing. Do you anything you want to bring up about that, Al?
I still like the little hesitance that Jessica has with Cheney. I mean, she accepts her a little bit better now, but there's still that little bit of.
Is she right for my son? Is yeah.
He says, "I do love your Cheney. I accept her.
I
accept her. I accept that you like her. I love her, sort
of." A friend of mine, he's divorced his wife now, but she when I used to be friends with both of them, and she would tell the story of how before she was married to him, she asked her father, like on their wedding day, he was about to walk her down the aisle. So horrible time to ask this anyway, if you don't know it already. But she asked her father, I mean, you do like him, don't you? You do like him. And her father said, about to literally walk her down the aisle and hand her over, said, he's not my favorite person. Wow. I don't hate him, but he's not my favorite person.
That boded well, didn't it?
I know, exactly. Ended up in divorce anyway. So yeah, it was I accept her. I accept her, as she says. As Paul's prepping here for the worm writing, he does bring out even what is it? He has his water tube in his staff, and already that was a legend in the land. Half pridefully, Paul thought, I cannot do the simplest thing without its becoming a legend. They will mark how I parted from Cheney, how I greet Stilgar. Every move I make this day, live or die, it is a legend. I must not die. Then it will be only legend and nothing to stop the jihad. So Paul, I like that aspect that Paul's still trying to stop this horrible war that he knows the blind worship of him could lead to. So he's, yes, I will do this. I will be leader. I will do this because I need to make sure I, being the only one, can steer it away from this horrible, possible foreseeable future. And then, of course, a great way to set up for the moment is at the end of this chapter. He's scanning the horizon, remembering Stilgar's words, judge the line approach, blah, blah, blah. Slowly, he scanned the horizon, listening, watching. Came out of the southeast, so the worm is coming. A sand whisper. Presently, he saw the faraway outline of the creature's track against the dawn light and realized he had never before seen a maker this large. Never heard one of this size. It appeared to him more than half a league along, and the rise of the sand wave at its cresting head was like the approach of a mountain. This is nothing I have seen by vision or in life, Paul cautioned himself. He hurried to take the path of his stand, caught up entitled by the rushing needs of this moment. Great way to end the chapter. Like, that's not a place you stop reading for the night. Absolutely not. You got to find out what happens there. So, now we jump over, though, again, just to keep the tension. Now we jump to Jessica, far away in the south, at the sea edges there, where the women are at the moment. So we still don't quite know what's happening with Paul and the Maker yet. But Jessica, now 2 years later, we finally get her experience of being the Reverend Mother, and she's settled into it quite nicely. Everything's pretty well. She's worried about Paul at this moment. She is worried about Aaliyah, how Aaliyah is being accepted or not accepted. But what I find interesting is how Hera has developed. Hera she's remained Paul's servant, and her children, trained under Paul because he has sort of responsibility for them after slaying what's his name, Jameis. Thank you. But it's interesting. She's crucial now. Both Jessica and Aaliyah realize they need Hera. She is their link. She's the one to actually help the people accept Aaliyah, who's a second Reverend Mother, basically. So I find Hera, she was first introduced as this sort of clueless, dainty, but I'm young, stamping her foot, but now all of a sudden she's evolved into something that's pretty crucial. Character is pretty crucial. Quickly in the chat, I do see that Green Lion Girls joined us. Trooper FN2525 had joined us a while ago, so thank you, sir. Malwinius Cyrano Ulfram from York. What a name. Has joined us there. But I'll see Matt Wilkins. Matt Wilkins joined us. Matt Wilkins from his great channel and the EU website, Star Wars EU website. So good to see you. So he's reading Hunters of Dune right now. Yeah, I need to get that far. I've read the first 2 books and part of the third one, Children of Dune.
There are so many books right now.
I know, it's crazy. And short stories that tie in and stuff. And yeah. Herbert himself wrote wrote a short story. I'll get back to this. I'll get back to the study here in a second. But wrote a short story that's sort of a tour guide of Arrakis after the events of this first novel. It's interesting to seek out if you have a chance. You can find it online, I'm sure. Anyway, so Aaliyah, we've already kind of prefaced this talking about in the experience there, but we get her perception and her perspective of what went on, how she was just suddenly called into consciousness, and the turmoil of that, being in a womb called into consciousness, and then the soothing consciousness of her mother. But she only gets a moment to draw comfort from that before, boom, the old Reverend Mother's consciousness is there. And then she's got so many consciousnesses working over her, she doesn't even know who she is. And that's really, it's a great way of putting it. She doesn't even know where she stopped or where she began and so forth anymore. Oh, I'm sorry. Wolf 10 Media says, hey, I'm here. Good to see you, Wolfie. But she doesn't even know where she begins and ends anymore. She was too young to know how to retain her identity. And this is interesting when you're caught up in the, from Herbert's perspective here, when you're caught up in the idea of a religion or a politics of ideology, that kind of idea that he's trying to warn against is that you can lose your identity in trying to fulfill all of these agendas and destinies that other people have laid for you, So Leah is sort of a nice picture of that. And of course we get to her saying that she is a Reverend Mother. Hera will remain for to help with that, because Hera doesn't like it at first. It doesn't like Aaliyah playing jokes on her and stuff like that, doing certain things. Also, cultural differences. Like Aaliyah was in trouble at first because there was a birthing, and the babies are supposed to cry all they will because they can't cry in the desert. It's the cry it, get it all out at birth apparently. But Aaliyah got tired of the crying and just walks over and touches the baby and does some Reverend Mother thing.
Crying.
Exactly. How dare you?
Just like Dwight on The Office was able to quiet the baby.
Mm-hmm. And I like how Hera, at the end of the chapter, reverts back to servant mode. But she stepped up into something really important. But she does revert to servant mode, knowing that she's needed. She was going to quit there or leave. You could be right, Hera said. If you are, you may find a surprising ally, Chani herself. This is it. Let's go back to this. Make your own choices. You're able to say. I pity Chani, Hera said. Jessica stiffened. What do you mean? I know what you think of Chani, Hera said. You think she is not the wife for your son. Jessica settled back, relaxed on her cushion. She shrugged. Perhaps. You could be right, Hera said. If you are, you may find a surprising ally, Chani herself. She wants whatever is best for him. Jessica swallowed past a sudden tightening in her throat. Chani's very dear to me, she said. She could be no... And then Hera just changes the subject. Your rugs are very dirty in here. This is not something I need to talk to you about, But that idea, this is the revelation, or what she's trying to... Or what Jessica realizes here in this moment is that Chani's not with Paul because she does want to be with Paul, but she's there because she wants what's best for him. And sometimes she herself doubts if she's the best, This will all play out in the way it ends, of course, but excuse me. Do you have anything else from that chapter? I didn't really have much else to talk about there.
Of course, right now, we haven't been really talking about all the other Fremen are so much into following Paul that they want him to call out Stilgar.
Yes, yeah. Because we're going to see this come to a head after he rides the Maker. But
they're the stirrings of it right now that there was like, Paul's got to call him out, because that's the way.
Yeah. Especially the young men who've been so excited about following Paul on the successful military, raids and whatnot. And that is their way. The next leader becomes leader only by the first one dying, or the first one or the second one calling him out to battle and besting him in battle to the death. So yeah. The next chapter, again, just checking in with these epigraphs. I like this. You cannot avoid the interplay of politics within an Orthodox religion. This power struggle permeates the training, educating, and disciples of the Orthodox community. Because of this pressure, the leaders of such a community inevitably must face that ultimate internal question: to succumb to complete opportunism as the price of maintaining their rule, or risk sacrificing themselves for the sake of the Orthodox ethic. Now, that's fascinating. That is something very, very, very true about any organized religion. I say that as a faithful conservative, even practicing Catholic myself, but that's something that happens. I mean, there's all kinds of controversy over the Pope's agreements with over China with the Chinese government to allow certain things go on there and certain things. There's that constant question of trade off. The Vatican's whatnot, as it happens in other religions too. I just speak from that because of my experience there. But interesting here. So we talked about finding logic and finding some kind of pattern in the nature. So the epigraphs kind of show the character progression of his thoughts. Now he's to the point where he's juggling, okay, how much do I give in to these expectations? How much do I just sacrifice myself for the ethic of it? And this all comes to what Al was saying there. Are you going to call out Stilgar or not? So the Maker comes up. Paul is able to mount it, to ride it. He does a good job. But Stilgar, this is an interesting, I love this little exchange. So the rest of the Fremen climb aboard, and Stilgar comes up, checking everybody's hook placements, and looks at Paul and says, "You did it, hey?" Stilgar asked, raising his voice above the hiss of their passage. "That's what you think. You did it." He straightened. "Now I tell you that was a very sloppy job. We have 12-year-olds who do better. There was drum sand to your left where you waited. You could not retreat there if the worm turned that way." The smile slipped from Paul's face, blah, blah, blah. And Stilgar says, "You think it bad of me to say this now," Stilgar said. "It is my duty. I think of your worth to the troop. If you had stumbled into that drum sand, the Maker would have turned toward you." In spite of a surge of anger, Paul knew that Stilgar spoke the truth. It took a long minute and the full effort of the training he had received from his mother for Paul to recapture a feeling of calm. "I apologize," he said. "It will not happen again." "In a tight position, always leave yourself a secondary, someone to take the Maker if you cannot," Stilgar said. "Remember that. We work together. That way we're certain. We work together, hey?" He slapped Paul's shoulder. "We work together," Paul agreed. So what you have right there in this little tiny exchange is Paul overcoming that sense of youthful pride, like, "Oh, shut up, old man, I can do it better," that we see most youthful people just succumb to, But no, I do need your wisdom. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition between that little exchange from Stilgar and Paul, and even ultimately until Paul tells him, "I will not call you out. We need you." Juxtapose that with Thade and Baron Harkonnen coming to that uneasy bargain, but both still, or at least Thade still wanting to kill Harkonnen.
Yeah, this gives Paul the reason for not needing to call him out.
Yeah.
He's basically he's changing the way the Fremen do this. So.
Yeah, and I like how he does that later. Remind me, because I definitely want to talk about that. If I
love how they do the writing, though. How they get on him, cracking open that little piece, and he just, "I don't want to stay in there," so he rolls over.
Yeah, they lift a scale, or I think that's the way I put it, like a ridge on the worm's body, and underneath that ridge is a sensitive area that they don't want sand in.
As far away from the sand, and then they take the guys up with them.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense, definitely. One thing I don't quite get, though, is which way are the scales facing? Because if they go through the sand motion-wise, the scales would have to lift up from the rear of the worm. So that's but it seems like awkward. Like, I'm going to pull this scale up from your forward momentum, and yet that's going to pull me up. How easy would it be? Yeah, I can imagine the skill. How easy would it be to slip down and lose that hook or something,
you kind of stick it in and like pry it. And then, of course, they don't want that area there, so it rolls up. It keeps that part at the top. And then, of course, the older Makers, you could tell what their primary, because you can't really tell what's up or down on them because they look the same.
Yeah.
But the older ones, you could tell by the way the rings run, like the thicker one. It's like having a callus. You could tell what's being used the most, or how he rides, or how he goes through the most. Yeah.
Troy says the depiction in the Lynch film does a great job. I can't remember. Do you remember the Lynch film?
That's where I'm getting most of the visual, and I think they pulled that off perfectly. That's exactly how you
Okay.
read this, remembering the film. That's exactly how it kind of feels.
Yeah. I watched the film once years ago, and I don't remember all the little pieces, but I am looking forward to the rewatch in a couple weeks on Troy's channel. That we'll all be there to finally watch that once we've supposedly probably finished up Dune by then, or just about anyway. All right, so then Paul, as the one who's claimed the worm as a worm rider, he gets to choose their destination, and he wants to go to the Southern Sietch. He's yet to see. He wants to be back with his family, but Stilgar says, that he has heard the reports of the unrest among the young Fremen. Paul thought, Stilgar knows that they want to go fight. They want him to go somewhere where he can call out Stilgar at this point. This was the last obstacle that Paul had to be their complete and total leader. And now that he has it, they want him to go ahead and take over. There's an interesting little exchange between Paul and Stilgar. The Stilgar thinks he's going to call him out, and Paul knows, being in earshot of the men, he can't say, "Don't worry, I would never do that," because he'll lose the respect of the men. So he has to kind of let Stilgar think that I'm going to call you out, and Stilgar knows he'll kill him. If he does, I mean, Stilgar knows his days are numbered at that point. But they're interrupted by this tense moment by the ornithopter, and of course that's the smugglers come. They think it maybe it's Harkonnen or whatever. They realize it must be the smugglers, so they go into hiding. Usul must give way to the decisions that match a terrible purpose, Paul thought, and the storm was gathering. So great way to end the chapter again. Now we jump to the smugglers' perspective. So really great way of bouncing back and forth in a way of, sometimes novels that bounce back and forth between perspectives do it in a really annoying way. Like, man, I really want to know what's going on with these people over here. Stop getting away from that. I don't really care so much about what's happening over here, but this one's doing it really well because all of the different perspectives are relevant to the same sort of scene or outcome, and it does sort of flesh it out. So we're with the smugglers, and it's Gurney Halleck. We remember that Gurney Halleck made that arrangement to go ahead and stay with the smugglers, biding his time until he could revenge the House Atreides. I like the epigraph for this one too. When law and duty are one, united by religion, you never become fully conscious, fully aware of yourself. You are always a little less than an individual. This is the theme, remember, because this is basically what Aaliyah went through. This is exactly what Aaliyah went through with all these consciousnesses pouring over her, but now in this context, when politics or when duty and law and duty are united by religion, then you become less than an individual. That greater purpose, that kind of idea. So Gurney, they want to go there on a spice hunt. They're looking for spice. They decide to go check where they saw that worm, but Gurney's he knows that these new raids have been really intense. This Muad'Dib has really just been crazy, and even killed a lot of their men smugglers. And now they're using rockets. Gurney thinks, by the horns, the Great Mother, rockets. They're there to use rockets.
And they set the spice there just a little bit to make it look like a spice blow.
Yeah, exactly. So they come to blows, and of course the Fremen are just totaling the smugglers. They're annihilating them there until the moment when Paul recognizes Gurney, and Gurney has moved out a crysknife, I think, at this point, and Paul says, "Leave the knife in its sheath, Gurney Halleck," the man said. Gurney hesitated. That voice sounded oddly familiar, even though a still suit filter. "You know my name," he said. "You have no need of a knife with me, Gurney," the man said. He straightened, slipped his crysknife into his sheath. "Tell your men to stop their useless resistance." Then finally realizes that it's Paul. What I like about this reunion between Paul and Gurney here is that it is a wonderful, touching reunion. You would expect it to be. At the same time, there is tension and possibility for conflict, even though Gurney's 100% never stopped being loyal to Paul, just didn't know he was alive. He's wary of him because he's with the Fremen now, and the Fremen have been his enemies as a smuggler for so long, in terms of raids and stuff like that. And then of course, ultimately in the end, there's that final conflict that he still thinks Jessica's the traitor, and how is he going to be loyal to Paul and yet exact vengeance on his mother? So a great reunion, something you want to see, but it's done in a way that is clearly not the end of the book. If this was done poorly, this could basically just sort of be, and the end, he found his friends again and it was all good or whatever, but we've got enough conflict and tension and things to still resolve, which is good. But they go inside this this cave here, and then Gurney has signaled to Paul before this that there are some men that I can't trust. I don't know them well enough. And Paul recognizes them eventually as Sardaukar, who have gone undercover here. And they're all about killing. And it's interesting, how Paul subdues them. Paul doesn't just have the Fremen kill all the Sardaukar. They start going crazy inside the cave there. But Paul doesn't have them kill them all. He has them subdue them. And he says, he starts playing sort of a loyalty game. He says, you would attack the Duke that your emperor set up here. And it's an interesting little mic because, of course, we know the emperor set out to overthrow and kill the Atreides and Paul ultimately. But technically, Paul, as the heir to Duke Leto, is the Duke appointed to Arrakis by the emperor himself. So it's an interesting little conundrum he presents to the Sardaukar. And ultimately this idea that he's using the voice on him a little bit to finally get him to surrender. The fact that the Sardaukar, actually the commander, ends up killing one of his men that tries to attack Paul because he's decided to, or he's been forced to by the voice to submit. And I like it in the end. He says, you will, I've killed one of my own men for you. Remember that. And Paul says, basically it doesn't matter. You surrendered. You're my prisoner, no matter what. But so I like that. But to talk about Stilgar and Paul here, Stilgar has left when the Sardaukar attack because he left to get Chani out of danger. And I love this because now that is naturally a cowardly thing to do among the Fremen, for a man to leave the fighting. But Paul recognizes, or comes to find out through their conversation, Stilgar did it not because he was scared of fighting. It's a Stilgar, it's amazing Stilgar. He leaves because he knows Paul is not at his best when Chani is in danger or Chani is around. So if he doesn't ensure Chani's security, then Paul might be open to attack or whatever, not be his best. Really shrewd and fascinating thinking, and really good. And this helps Paul realize that Paul never was going to kill him or take him out, but there's no way he can do without that fatherly wisdom. He just simply can't. He was robbed of his true father, but now Stilgar needs to remain as a fatherly figure to him. And getting Stilgar to accept it is very hard because Stilgar does not want to let go of the way, but I love that Paul sets a precedent. So Paul is changing things. Like you said, Al, the ways are changing, but Paul does it in a way that's pretty shrewd on his own because he does it by setting precedent or finding previous precedent for it. So he says, you'll remember when you found us as intruders on Fremen territory, the way was to have killed us and taken our water, but you chose something different. You said ways change, So Stilgar already implemented this precedent, and now he's bringing that back home to Stilgar. You will acquiesce or abdicate to me, leadership, but you're going to remain in an advisory role, So really interesting way that kind of turns out.
Yeah, he's able to because the last thing he wants is to lose Stilgar. I mean, that like he said, it's a weapon. When I just throw my weapon away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And interesting too, again, juxtaposing that with Baron Harkonnen, because Harkonnen thinks of people as tools. So Paul says weapon, but I never waste a useful tool. But Harkonnen has no care for these quote unquote tools. He didn't care for Piter. He didn't care for Yui. He doesn't care for Hawat. He's just using them for what he can use them for before he has them, expired or whatever.
Yeah, because Paul actually he uses the term. It's like, do you think I wish to cut off my right arm? It's a piece of itself. I mean, the Fremen are a unit, a body. And It's like, I'm not going to cut off the most useful limb just because of some ancient way.
Yeah. And religion has permeated these the Fremen in this whole story. And again, he had the orange Catholic Bible and stuff like that. And it reminds me of Paul's talking about the body of Christ. Can the eye say to the hand, I have no need of you? No. So this is the sort of new covenant, quote unquote, that Paul is bringing to the Fremen's way of understanding and doing things. That's interesting. I also like the little bit of possible conflict between Stilgar and Gurney. And Paul has to say, I would have you two be friends. And they do have a respect for each other and a healthy sort of reverence for what each other can do. But there's a little bit of distrust that this new leader of Paul, or his new advisor, his new teacher meets the old teacher, right? So you can see how there's a little bit of friction there.
A little jealous. Oh, yeah.
And yeah. And the last thing I have to say about it is that it's amplified by the end of the chapter, which is talk about a great way to build up tension again. As we said, Gurney finds out about Jessica. The she-witch alive, Gurney thought. The one I swore vengeance against alive. And it's obvious Duke Paul doesn't know of what manner of creature gave him birth. The evil one betrayed his own father to the Harkonnens. Paul passed him, jumped to the ledge. He glanced back, noted the wounded and the dead removed. He thought bitterly that there was another chapter in the legend of Paul Muad'Dib. I didn't even draw my knife, but it'll be said of this day that I slew 20 Sardaukar by my own hand. Gurney followed with Stilgar, stepping on around that he did not even feel. The cavern with its yellow light of glow globes was forced out of his thoughts by rage. The she-witch alive. While those she betrayed are bones and lonesome graves, I must contrive it that Paul learns the truth about her before I slay her. So wonderful conflict and tension building up there for the next rest of it. Exactly. Did you have anything else about that?
No, I just love the message, because I think the one thing that Paul's worried about, and I think Stilgar's worried, and Jessica's worried, is one, they needed to keep Stilgar, and two, would the young Fremen accept it? And,
exactly. That was the hairy place.
It basically says Stilgar has accepted me as the Duke of Arrakis, kind of a new thing now. That the Fremen are, they've basically restructured the Fremen hierarchy.
Yeah. So, looking at it here in terms of chopping up or dividing up the rest for us here, I think that if we cut it into two here, and a good even, it looks like an even division from my book anyway, is stopping this next week's reading at the Padishah Emperor nodded, waved for one of his aides to obey that command. That would be the end of the last chapter we would read for next week. So it would be, let's see, one.
Really isn't much left.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, if you guys wanted to, I don't mind. We could feasibly just power through it all. It's up to you guys. What do you guys in the chat think? What do you think, Al? Would you want to power through it all? The rest of the book?
617. It'd be 537 to 617. That's less than 100 pages. Because a lot of the at the end is appendices.
You're right. Yeah. Well, do you guys it looks like a lot of people in the chat have been saying that they finished the book anyway. Do you just want to finish out the book for next week? I don't mind that. Let's do it. All right. No one in the chat seriously disagrees or whatever. I think that's good because honestly, looking at the calendar, and Troy, you remind me, or you correct me if I'm wrong here. Not this Monday. Sound Engraver is going to be away these next 2 Mondays. So Troy's doing some rewatches and filling that space. Yes. Bride's next week. And then the 5th is going to be Dune, right?
Is it?
I think. Yeah. Confirm that, Troy, or tell me if I'm wrong. Is October 5th the Dune rewatch on your channel? You had asked me some questions about it, but I don't know. Did you completely?
Is that on a Monday?
Yeah, it's a Monday. It's the last Monday that Sound Engraver won't be back for her live stream. The chat's agreeing with you, Al. Let's do it. Finish the audiobook, Tom Spiegel says. Melissa Harris says, I agree with Big Al. Do it. All right, yeah, so Troyce is correct. October 5th is Dune. Okay, well, that way.
Let's get the worms saddled up.
Well, that way, the 1st, next Thursday, we would finish the book talking about it anyway. And then the 5th, a few days later, we'd watch the movie on Troy's channel. So, yeah, that works. All right, well, we'll just finish out the book next time. We'll just do it.
Yeah, like I said, it's actually fair. It's like probably the smallest section that we've had.
Yeah. And that'll give us, I I need to take a look at some good division points within the Halloween tree. It's very short, it's a children's story, but it's a good like novella length anyway, at least because
And it's
it's
like three
like I
hours and
said,
something on audio. So
yeah. And I need to look at the book and find some division points, but it's that'll be good to go ahead and start that next week and have that finished and being able to do the rewatch before Halloween. Sounds perfect. Cool. All right. Well, any closing comments on Dune this week, Al?
no, I just love the worm riding. That's just just a cool way to travel.
And I mean, symbolically, what that is it's taming that unbound, wild, masculine energy, right? It's integrating your shadow. It's working with your id.
And to them, it's almost like working in Congress with a god. So it's a very, it's like I am, riding. I am with the Lord, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. All right. So, Crispy says, "Do it now. Get to the chopper." Oh, good. All right. So, it's the stuff.
Sorry.
The image you did with the zero in on Dutch's face. I didn't get it. What are we supposed to see when we zoom in on Dutch's head?
Did you zoom in on his head?
Oh, I did it on my phone. Okay, there's something written there, isn't there? What did
it says? Go to the other guy's gun, and you go there. It says go to this thing, and this is now.
Look at look up bodies
to the right. It's like, congratulations, you made it to the chopper. Because it's just a picture. It's just a weird
now
thing.
I see it. I see it now on the computer. I couldn't make that out on my phone. That's pretty funny, actually. Okay. Yeah. That's good. Good. All right, so this is Thursday. Tomorrow night, Friday Night Frights on the Fan Man's channel. I wanted to be there, but I don't think I will be able to. I think I'm gonna have to do some more work to do, but that'll be on Fan Man's channel. Saturday is
Dark Night of the Scarecrow. It is on YouTube, so there's no excuse.
That's Friday. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yes, no excuse. That's on Friday. Yeah, everybody can watch along. Yeah, but Saturday is Ghost of Mr. Chicken on your channel, right?
Ghost of Mr. Chicken, 10 o'clock on Big Al Presents. Don Knotts. So funny, so great.
Maybe something from Wolftown Media Saturday. He's kind of I think he's got some different scheduling things going on, but there's that. And then of course Sunday is both the Weeb Watch on Matchstick's channel and the Study Hall with Troy Bocelli and AJ Boomer. So that's always good to check out. Great thing to do there. Now Monday, even though Sound Engraver is not here doing a live stream Monday, she has already finished some really cool videos. She's going to talk about or analyze the heroic theme of Superman first, I think, and then of He-Man next. So I think she says she's going to set those to premiere Monday night. So you will still have Sound Engraver content Monday night, even if we don't have Monday Night Muse. So that's pretty cool. And then of course, Monday, as you said, The Bride will be on Troy's channel. And that kind of correlates with us just watching The Bride of Frankenstein, recently on my Tuesday Night Classics. So that's good. And that's Monday. And then of course, Tuesday, back to Tuesday Night Classics. We have, what do we have this Tuesday? Is coming up. The Mummy. That's right. The Mummy. Boris Karloff's iconic first Mummy film. So Troy, I was really excited about that. He loves his mummy.
I love my mummy.
Al's a mummy's boy.
It's a week of the Mummy because in the following Friday, Fan Man will be doing the Hammer Mummy with Christopher Lee.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Sound Engraver says rendering a 45 freaking minute analysis of Superman 1978 right now, premiering Monday afternoon. Cool. Oh, so it appears Monday afternoon, not necessarily that night either. So it doesn't necessarily conflict with the watch there. Cool. Very cool. So that's Monday, Tuesday, The Mummy. And then, of course, Wednesday, Green Lion Girl has made it a weekly thing now to do these gaming rewatches. So that's always fun. You'll check that out. And Daniel Heron, if you're still here, are you going to be doing your thing every Wednesday now too? Or is it just sort of every other Wednesday? I didn't know how frequently you're going to schedule that or just as you want or whatever. But let me know, because that was a good analysis too of the music and stuff. I think they might even be doing Superman the movie this week. It seems like I heard that somewhere, but I might be wrong, so don't take my word for it. So yeah, we got a good solid week left, and we will finish up Dune.
Still got a good month
Thursday.
of some good horror, classic horror, and some not so
Halloween on Al's channel.
Hellraisers coming up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So any element of Halloween you like, whether you like the real hardcore horror stuff like Al and Troy, you've got that kind of stuff like Hellraiser and whatnot. If you got just the family friendly fun, you can find that on Al's channel. If you like the more classic, iconic sort of classic monsters, you got that on my channel. So really covering Halloween pretty well, and of course Fan Man going hog wild with horror. Though I think Night of the Scarecrow was a TV movie. So
I actually watched it yesterday. It's much more of a thriller. It's a tension kind of horror, as opposed to it's not blood and guts kind of thing. But it's really good. It's really a good film.
Yeah, I'd like to be there because it sounds like it might be sort of along the lines of like Tales from the Dark Side or something.
A little bit. Has Lane Smith from Lois and Clark, if you remember him.
Okay. Yeah. He's the best. He was my favorite Perry White.
Charles Durning.
Period.
Ooh, I love to dance a little side step.
Okay. So yeah, good going there. What was I gonna say? I say something before Al started singing and drove all logical thought from my mind.
I do have that effect on you, don't
I? Oh yes, I was so beguiled by your dulcet tones. Oh yeah. I'd like to be that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. It just depends on how much work I get done. So, but yeah, that'll be good there. Lots of content, lots of great Halloween celebration content coming up, and heroic content and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a stream, so I can go ahead and get to some things. But thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks for coming by the pre-show. Hopefully that was something of use in that pre-show. Again, it was just sort of off the cuff, but didn't have much prepared. But I do think it's important, the things I talked about in terms of ending a story, kind of using the Hollywood writing as a guide not to do, what not to do. Yeah, Trooper says, so many links, I know. And Troy, thank you, Troy, for being so studious and dropping those links each and every time. And I know it seems like it might be kind of like, well, why are you dropping the links, or why do you keep mentioning these things on the stream, since all of us here clearly know it? But, we have gained new followers, new members of the Facebook group. We've gained them just from constantly and consistently doing this. You never know that new person watching, or somebody watching the replay of the video, they get to that end and they see those links and they join up. So the Professor Geek Facebook group is doing well, and the streams are growing too. So it's good for everybody. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks guys for hanging out. Thanks for the book study. Last chance for
you gotta stop busting on Battlestar Galactica, dude.
If it stopped sucking, I'd stop busting.
It didn't suck. You didn't like it. Doesn't mean it sucked.
Awful writing. Amazing performances. How about that? I'll give you that. Amazing performances. Truly an amazing cast.
I personally like the way it ended.
You do have to realize you're in the minority, though, even among Battlestar Galactica fans.
Care.
I know. I'm not asking you to change your mind. I'm saying you do know that. Most people aren't happy.
Well, that's fine.
Okay. Just wanted to see that out. All right.
They can do. Just, don't need to keep driving it home.
On your own channel. On your own stream. Gosh.
But you call me out and get me involved.
Like Al's the sidekick. I need him to fly my cape, hold me up in the air for my flights. So, all right, guys, we'll see you later. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories.